They said his job was simple. Park the cars. Keep his head down. Stay invisible. Every day, Elias Grant stood beneath a building that carried someone else's name, a tower of glass and steel that reflected the sky, but never reflected him. Then one morning, a billionaire stepped out of a luxury car, looked at Elias's uniform and laughed. Not because of what Elias said, but because of what he assumed, that he didn't know the man holding his keys had once drawn the very lines holding the building upright. He didn't know the concrete beneath his feet carried a signature erased on purpose. And he definitely didn't know that in just a few hours he would look up at that building and see Elias Grant's name staring back at him. Welcome to Black Stories Hub. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for the support. Stay tuned for daily stories that echo beyond words, and don't forget to subscribe. The Harrington Grand Hotel dominated the downtown skyline like a promise carved in glass and marble. It wasn't just a place to sleep. It was where deals were sealed, where reputations were made or quietly buried, where wealth moved behind polished doors with no need to explain itself. Every morning, luxury cars lined up beneath its sweeping entrance canopy. Bentleys, Maybachs, imported SUVs with windows so dark they reflected the world without revealing who sat inside. And every morning, standing at the curb in a neatly pressed navy uniform, was Elias Grant. Elias was the hotel's senior parking attendant. Not by title, there was no such official designation, but by experience. He'd worked that driveway for nearly 12 years. Rain, heat, holidays, early mornings and late nights. He stood straight, shoulders relaxed but firm, movements efficient. He didn't rush, didn't linger. He treated every guest with the same measured courtesy. A nod, a greeting, a calm voice. Good morning. Welcome to the Harrington. Most people barely noticed him. Some nodded back. A few avoided eye contact altogether. Elias never took it personally. He believed respect wasn't something you begged for. It was something you practiced even when no one returned it. Inside the hotel, preparations were underway for a private investment summit. Executives and high-net-worth individuals were arriving from around the world. Security was tighter. Staff moved quickly, quietly. And then Victor Langston arrived. Langston's car, a black, custom-modified Rolls-Royce, pulled up with theatrical precision. The engine purred like it knew its own value. The driver stepped out, opening the rear door with ceremony. Langston emerged tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed. He was known in financial circles as a ruthless visionary. A billionaire whose real talent wasn't money, but leverage. He acquired companies the way others collected watches. He paused, surveyed the hotel, then glanced at Elias like one might glance at a parking meter. Elias stepped forward. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the Harrington Grand. May I take your vehicle? Langston didn't respond at first. He checked his phone, then his watch. Finally, without looking up, he said, Do you know how long I've been waiting? Elias kept his tone even. Just arrived, sir. Langston smirked faintly. Figures. The driver hesitated, then handed Elias the keys. Elias took them carefully, as he always did. Langston finally looked at him. Really looked. You people always stand like that, he said. So serious, as if this job matters. A few nearby guests slowed their steps. A concierge glanced over, uncomfortable. Elias didn't react. I'll have your car secured immediately, sir. Langston waved him off. Just don't get any ideas. This car costs more than most houses. Elias nodded. Yes, sir. As he turned to guide the car away, Langston added, almost casually, You ever think about doing something more with your life? The question wasn't curiosity. It was a judgment. Elias paused for half a second, then continued walking. Inside the hotel, Langston smiled to himself. He hadn't come here to be impressed by parking attendants. He had no idea the building itself was watching. By mid-morning, the driveway was crowded. Guests arrived in clusters. Conversations overlapped. Luggage rolled. Cameras flashed. Langston re-emerged from the hotel, phone pressed to his ear, irritation etched across his face. Unacceptable, he snapped into the phone. I said 10 minutes. 10. He ended the call abruptly and looked around. His eyes landed on Elias. You, he said sharply. Bring my car. Now. Elias checked the log. Of course, sir. It'll be right up. Langston scoffed. I don't want right up. I want now. Elias remained calm. I'll do my best. Langston stepped closer, lowering his voice but not enough to hide the contempt. People like you always say that. Always doing your best. A bellhop froze. A couple waiting for their ride exchanged glances. Elias met Langston's eyes, not defiantly but steadily. "Sir," he said quietly, "your vehicle is being brought as quickly as possible." Langston laughed. Loudly. "Listen to him," he said, turning to the small audience that had gathered. "So polite. So obedient." The word hung in the air. Elias felt it. The weight of it. The way silence can bruise. But he didn't respond. Langston shook his head. "This place really hires anyone these days." Then he did something unnecessary. He snapped his fingers. "Move," he said. Elias felt the eyes on him. Felt the moment stretch. He stepped aside not out of fear but out of choice. Langston smirked, satisfied. The power imbalance had been asserted. As Elias walked away, Langston muttered, "Stay in your lane." The car arrived moments later. Elias opened the door, handing over the keys. "Have a good day, sir," he said. Langston snorted and drove off. No one clapped. No one spoke. But something had shifted. That afternoon, long after the driveway quieted, Elias stood alone beneath the hotel's towering facade. He looked up. Above the main entrance, carved into stone and steel, was a dedication plaque most guests never noticed. It listed donors, architects, founders, and at the very bottom, in smaller lettering, "Original Structural Concept, E. Grant." Years earlier, before the Harrington was a symbol of excess, it had been an ambitious public-private project. Elias, then an engineer with a brilliant mind and an unremarkable resume, had been brought in as a consultant. He had designed the load-bearing systems that allowed the building to rise higher without sacrificing safety. He'd solved problems others couldn't. He'd worked nights, missed holidays. When funding shifted and the project went private, contracts were renegotiated. Credits reduced. Names removed. Elias had objected once. Only once. After that, life intervened. His mother fell ill. Medical bills consumed his savings. Stability mattered more than recognition. When the hotel opened, Elias applied for a job. Parking attendant. He didn't hide his past. He simply didn't lead with it. Inside the hotel, Marianne Cole, the operations director, stood reviewing old documents for the summit. She paused at a blueprint. "That name again," she murmured. She walked to the window and looked down at the driveway. At Elias. A quiet realization settled in her chest. The next morning, the summit reconvened in the Harrington's top-floor conference room. Langston sat at the table's center, confident, commanding. Midway through a presentation, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then stabilized. A murmur rippled through the room. Marianne frowned. She excused herself and stepped into the hall, speaking urgently into her phone. Minutes later she returned pale. "Mr. Langston," she said carefully, "we're experiencing instability in the auxiliary systems." Langston rolled his eyes. "Then fix it." "We may need to consult the original design," Marianne replied. Langston smirked. "You're telling me no one here understands their own building?" Marianne hesitated. Then said, "There is someone." She pressed a button on the intercom. "Elias Grant, please come to the conference room." Langston laughed. "Who?" The doors opened. Elias stepped inside, uniform crisp, expression composed. Langston stared. "You've got to be kidding." Marianne gestured to the screens. "Mr. Grant designed the structural framework of this building." Silence fell. Langston looked from Elias to the plaque visible through the glass wall. Then back to Elias. "You?" he said. Elias nodded. "I helped design it." Langston leaned back, studying him with new eyes. "And you park cars?" "Yes." "Why?" Elias considered the question. "Because it's honest work. And because this building still matters to me." The system stabilized. Elias offered quiet instructions. No dramatics. No lectures. The room listened. Langston said nothing. For the first time in a long while, he felt small. Not because Elias made him feel that way, but because the mirror had been held up. The summit concluded early. Langston requested a private meeting. No apology. Just a conversation. "I misjudged you," Langston said finally. Elias nodded. "Most people do." Langston exhaled. "What do you want?" Elias shook his head. "I don't want anything." "That's not how this works," Langston said. "Maybe that's the problem," Elias replied gently. Weeks later, the Harrington announced structural reforms. Credits restored. Community scholarships funded. Elias was offered a leadership role. He accepted with conditions. He still parked cars some mornings. Not because he had to. Because dignity, he believed, was practiced daily. Langston watched him one morning from across the street. and for the first time he waited his turn. Sometimes the greatest power isn't standing above others, but standing firm when the world looks right through you. As Elias turned back toward the driveway, a black government sedan pulled to the curb. A woman stepped out, badge glinting in the sun. She looked at Elias and said quietly, "Mr. Grant, we need to talk about why your name was removed in the first place." The black government sedan idled beneath the Harrington Grand's entrance like it belonged there. People noticed. They always did when a car like that arrived. Windows dark, plates unmarked, presence deliberate. Elias Grant stood at his post, one hand resting lightly on the valet stand, watching as the woman stepped out. She moved with purpose. Not hurried. Not cautious. Confident in the way only someone backed by authority ever is. She wore a charcoal blazer, no visible insignia except a small badge clipped discreetly at her waist. "Mr. Grant," she said again, extending her hand. "My name is Angela Morrison. I'm with the Office of Federal Infrastructure Oversight." Elias shook her hand firmly. His face betrayed no surprise, but something inside him tightened. "I was wondering when someone would come," he said calmly. Angela studied him. "You knew." "I knew the truth doesn't stay buried forever," Elias replied. She nodded. "May we talk somewhere private?" Elias glanced at the hotel doors, the building he had helped bring into existence, the place that had both sustained and diminished him. "Yes," he said. "We can talk." From across the street, Victor Langston watched. He hadn't planned to be there that morning. Something had pulled him back, restlessness perhaps. Or unfinished business. When he saw the government sedan he frowned. And when he saw Elias step inside with the agent, unease crept in where certainty once lived. They sat in a quiet conference room overlooking the city. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating framed photographs of groundbreaking ceremonies, men in suits smiling, shovels in hand. Angela placed a thick folder on the table. "Mr. Grant," she said, opening it, "we're reviewing a series of public-private projects from 15 years ago. Several of them show irregularities." Elias leaned back slightly. Missing credits, altered contracts, reassigned intellectual ownership. Angela raised an eyebrow. "You're familiar." "I lived it," Elias said. She slid a document across the table. "This is the original structural proposal for the Harrington. Your signature is on every critical section." Elias glanced at it, then away. "And yet my name disappeared." Angela nodded. "It didn't disappear on its own." She paused, letting the silence do its work. "We believe multiple developers systematically removed minority contributors from official records to consolidate control and inflate valuations before acquisition." Elias closed his eyes briefly. Memories surfaced, late nights, dismissive emails, meetings where his voice had slowly been excluded. "I tried to fight it," he said quietly. "Once." Angela's voice softened. "Why didn't you push harder?" Elias opened his eyes. "Because my mother was dying. And I needed health insurance more than justice." Angela exhaled slowly. Outside the room, hotel staff passed by, unaware that the foundation beneath them, both literal and moral, was being examined. Langston sat alone in the hotel bar across the street, nursing a drink he hadn't touched. He replayed the last few days in his mind. The parking attendant. The plaque. The conference room. The agent. He prided himself on seeing angles others missed. On sensing risk before it materialized. This felt like risk. Langston made a call. "Find out who that agent is," he said quietly. "And what they're looking into." Pause. "And dig into Elias Grant. Everything." He ended the call and stared at the Harrington. For the first time, he wondered how many buildings like this one carried stories he'd never bothered to read. Angela closed the folder. "Mr. Grant," she said, "we may need your testimony. Not just about this building, but about others." Elias was silent. "This could reopen cases," Angela continued. "Reassign credits. Trigger audits. There will be backlash." Elias stood and walked to the window. Below, cars moved in neat lines. People hurried in and out of the hotel, unaware of the decisions being weighed above them. "When I designed this place," Elias said slowly, "I believed buildings could be honest. That if you built something strong enough, it would stand on its own." He turned back to her. "But systems don't correct themselves," he said. "People have to choose to do it." Angela met his gaze. "Are you willing to be that person?" Elias thought of the students at the community center. Of the young engineers he mentored quietly. Of the man he'd been, and the man he still was. "Yes," he said. "But not alone." Angela nodded. You won't be. News travels fast in places built on silence. Within days, whispers moved through boardrooms. Old partners stopped returning calls. Lawyers requested meetings. Documents were quietly retrieved from storage. The Harrington issued a vague statement about historical review. Langston received an email marked confidential. It listed 3 properties, all bearing his company's name, all tied to the same development group, all with missing contributors. He closed his laptop slowly. Across town, Elias stood once again at the driveway, guiding cars with the same steady professionalism. A guest thanked him. Another ignored him. Nothing looked different, but everything was. Angela watched from the sedan as Elias worked, then spoke into her phone. "He's in," she said. "And Mr. Langston may be more involved than we thought." She paused, listening. Her expression tightened. "What do you mean the files are gone?" She looked up at the Harrington, at the building that had started it all. Truth doesn't arrive with applause, it arrives quietly, asking who's willing to stand when the ground begins to shift. That night, Elias returned home to find his front door slightly open. Inside, the lights were on. And on his kitchen table lay a single envelope, unmarked, heavy, and sealed. Inside was a photograph of the Harrington under construction, with a note written in red ink. Some foundations were never meant to be exposed. Elias Grant did not touch the envelope immediately. He stood in the doorway of his apartment, keys still in his hand, listening. The city outside hummed like it always did, sirens in the distance, the low rumble of traffic, a neighbor's television bleeding through thin walls. Everything sounded normal. Too normal. He stepped inside, locked the door behind him, and approached the kitchen table slowly. The photograph was old, faded around the edges. Taken from above, an aerial shot of the Harrington Grand during early construction. Steel bones exposed. Concrete not yet poured. He recognized it instantly. That phase had lasted only 3 weeks. Only people inside the core development team had access to those images. Elias turned the photo over. Nothing written on the back. Just the note. Some foundations were never meant to be exposed. He folded the paper once, carefully, and sat down. Fear came, but it didn't stay. In its place came something steadier. Heavier. Resolve. The next morning, Angela Morrison arrived early. She didn't knock. She used the spare key Elias had given her 2 days earlier, just in case. "You got something," she said the moment she saw his face. Elias handed her the envelope. She read the note, then the photograph. Her jaw tightened. "This isn't intimidation," she said quietly. "This is confirmation." "Of what?" Elias asked. "That someone with access is scared," Angela replied. "And people like Victor Langston don't get scared easily." Later that day, Elias received a call. Unknown number. He answered anyway. "Mr. Grant," a familiar voice said. "Come." Measured. Polished. Victor Langston. Elias closed his eyes briefly. "Yes," he replied. "I wanted to apologize," Langston said, "for our first interaction." Elias waited. "I misjudged you," Langston continued, "and I value people who don't embarrass others when given the chance." Pause. "I also value discretion." Elias looked out the window. "And what are you offering?" he asked. Langston's voice softened. "Restoration. Your name on the building. Public recognition. A consulting position. Generous compensation." Elias said nothing. "All this," Langston added, "without the mess. Without tearing things apart." Elias finally spoke. "You mean without consequences?" Another pause. "Think about it," Langston said. "Some truths cost more than they're worth." The line went dead. 3 days later, the hearing room was full. No cameras. No live stream. Just long tables, government seals, and people who understood how power really moved. Elias sat at the witness table in a plain suit he'd owned for years. Angela sat behind him. Across the room sat Victor Langston, flanked by lawyers who looked expensive and exhausted. Elias spoke calmly. He explained the design process, the revisions, the meetings where his name slowly vanished from documents. He explained the transfer of intellectual credit, the quiet reassignment of ownership. He explained why he stopped fighting. "My mother was dying," Elias said simply, "and I had to choose between justice and survival." No dramatics. No anger. Just facts. Langston watched him closely. When Elias finished, Langston stood. "Mr. Grant," he said, "why come forward now?" Elias met his eyes. "Because silence protects systems," he said. "Not people." The room went still. The findings were not immediate. But they were decisive. Credits were reassigned. Contracts reopened. Foundations audited. Not just the Harrington, but 6 other developments tied to Langston's firm. Investors pulled back. Boards demanded explanations. Langston was not arrested. He was something worse. Exposed. His name was removed quietly from 2 buildings. Not replaced. Just gone. The Harrington Grand issued a revised plaque. No press release. No ceremony. Just a new line etched beneath the steel and glass. Designed by Elias Grant, lead structural engineer. Elias stood beneath it one evening after his shift. Guests passed by unaware. He touched the cool metal lightly. What? Then stepped back. Elias didn't quit immediately. He finished the week. Then the next. Because dignity, he believed, wasn't about dramatic exits. It was about consistency. When he finally left the valet stand for the last time, the manager shook his hand. "You built this place," the man said quietly. "I didn't know." Elias smiled gently. "Most people don't," he replied. Months later, Elias stood in a lecture hall filled with young engineers. He spoke about load paths, about integrity, about unseen supports, and sometimes about silence. Angela sat in the back listening. Victor Langston meanwhile sold assets. Smaller offices. Quieter life. No interviews. No statements. Just absence. The Harrington Grand still stood. Strong. Unchanged. But now honest. Some people spend their lives trying to leave their name on buildings. Others discover that the strongest legacy was holding the structure together all along. Before you go, ask yourself, how many people around you are being underestimated because of their position? Would you have chosen comfort over truth if you were in Elias's place? And if a system benefits you, would you have the courage to question it? Because sometimes the real test of character isn't who we admire. It's who we choose to see. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe for more touching stories like this one.